Deputy Noel Grealish, please.
Under your leadership, introduced an important grant scheme, the Large-Scale Sports Infrastructure Fund. This was a very welcome innovation by you and the then Minister for Sport, Shane Ross. It involved an initial capital allocation of over €100 million. As you were aware, Taoiseach, a lot of sports clubs and organisations around the country are looking to build large-scale facilities, but with a cap of €300,000 on funding available under the Sports Capital and Equipment Programme, a lot of these major projects simply cannot go ahead. Several projects were allocated funding under the Large-Scale Sports Infrastructure Fund in January 2020, and I welcome money that was allocated to projects in my own constituency of Galway West. Those included the redevelopment of the sports ground of Galway in Galway City by Connacht Rugby, the Galway Regional Aquatic Centre and the Rinville Sports and Community Centre facilities in Ardmore, which I was delighted to see getting full planning permission from our board Penala in recent weeks. Taoiseach, this was a fund that was very much welcomed by all the major sporting organisations. It was endorsed by the GAA, the IRFU and the FAI and many others. But it has effectively been stalled since these allocations announced more than 3 years ago. I firmly welcome that there is a real need for it to be reintroduced again. It may sound obvious, but international studies have shown that the presence of good sports facilities associated with the participation in physical activity and improved health among the general public as a result. These facilities also serve to bring communities together. Taoiseach, this country needs such a scheme to be operational again. Will you and your government seriously consider the reintroduction of a large-scale sports infrastructure fund in the forthcoming negotiations on the next budget?
Thank you, Deputy. Taoiseach.
Thanks, Deputy. Government funding for larger sports projects was previously provided on an ad hoc basis until the Large-Scale Sport Infrastructure Fund was launched back in 2018 to provide an open and transparent system. The LSSIF is designed to provide funding for larger sports facility projects where the amount being sought by applicants is greater than the funding available under the normal Sports Capital Programme. Following a detailed assessment process, the first allocations under the LSSIF were announced in January 2020, and so far approximately €86 million has been allocated to 33 different projects. In terms of existing grants, so far only 4 projects have drawn down funding to date. The new athletics facility in Newcastle West is almost complete. The design work on replacing Dalymount is almost complete, and construction has commenced in Walsh Park in Waterford and in Newbridge as well, I'm told. It should be noted that allocations were announced in January 2020, just prior to the pandemic, and that slowed progress considerably. The Department of Sport recently met with all of the grantees as part of their review of the project, review of the fund. And in addition to the 4 projects I mentioned, we now believe that 17 additional projects will be able to draw down some funding this year. And that represents significant progress, and the priority in the short term is to advance these existing projects, but the possibility of opening in new call proposals will be considered as part of the estimates process in advance of Budget 2024. But I should say the immediate priority is to enable the projects that have funding granted them to draw down some of that funding. And also I know Minister Martin and Minister Chambers, working with Mr Donoghue, are very keen to open up a new round of funding for small clubs, which happens every other year, funding for smaller clubs for capital and equipment, and they're working on that as well.
Taoiseach, I welcome your commitment to look at renewing this funding programme. I would like to briefly outline what the allocation to the Rinville Sports and Community Centre facilities meant to the community like Ardmore. This project is a joint one by the local Ardmore Mary GA, the Camogie clubs and the Niamh Ladies Football Club. Between them, they field an impressive 90 teams. They plan to construct a sports centre of excellence in Rinville Ardmore on a 34-acre site that will include 4 new playing pitches and a covered terrace, as well as community facilities like a public playground and walkway. They were allocated €2.1 million in 2020 under the Large-Scale Sports Infrastructure Fund to develop these facilities, and more than €1 million has been raised locally. This is just one community of 10,000 people who had never been able to provide such an ambitious facility without the support of the Large-Scale Sport Infrastructure Fund. Taoiseach, I would ask that you give other communities around the country the same opportunity that your government gave to the Rinville Sports Facility in Mario Ardmore, and I strongly urge you to reintroduce a new large-scale sports infrastructure fund grant scheme in the forthcoming budget.
Thank you, Deputy. Taoiseach.
Thanks, Deputy. And like I say, we will certainly give that consideration. And I think we can all agree in this House that funding for sport and funding for sports capital is taxpayers' money really well spent. I'm a former Minister for Sport. I've seen in my own constituency how sporting facilities have been transformed from the National Sports Campus to local clubs across Dublin 15 and Dublin 7. And it benefits us in so many different ways. It creates local jobs in communities all over the country, often for relatively small construction firms. It's good for physical health, good for children, good for mental health, good for community, and also helps to nurture those new athletes of the future that then go on to high performance and win medals and trophies for the country. So I think there are very few better ways to spend taxpayers' money than on sport, and I can assure you that we're working together to make sure that we make progress on all of those things over the course of the year.
Thank you, Taoiseach. That concludes Leaders' Questions for today.